Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, January 8th. As we always do, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have just a couple of quick announcements to make. One is that I was told it's former town clerk Ted Hegler's 90th birthday tomorrow, so just wanted to wish him a happy birthday and hope he has another great decade. Also notice in the room is Sergeant Steve Giampa, who just retired after 32 years. Just wanted to shout out and say thank you for all your hard work over the years. And first up on the agenda is vote recommendation of promotion of Detective Michael Benner to Police Sergeant. Chief, would you like to say a few words?
Take one, Sarge. I want to thank Sergeant Giampa for being here tonight, real quick as well. As you know, he's served the community of Walpole for more than 32 years. Had quite the career, and you know, one of the things I've been saying over and over the past couple of weeks since he left is, if you don't know Steve, he's probably one of the most empathetic and sincere police officers, respectful police officers you'll ever meet. I know he was probably the most with those characteristics since I've become a police officer, and he brought a lot of us up through the ranks as well, and he's going to be greatly missed here in the department and in the Walpole community. So thank you, Sergeant. Michael Benner coming in as the replacement. Detective Benner is an exemplary police officer. He has probably about 7 years of experience with the Walpole Police Department. Prior to that, he worked for the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. The deputy chief and I, the command staff, we talk a lot inside of the police station. We know that the position of sergeant, that first line supervisor was probably the most important and influential person on the department. They all know that, our officers know that. We interviewed 10 police officers for this one position, and you know, proudly you can say that any one of them could have stepped in and took this position over. And it's never a very easy decision to make with the caliber of officers that we have. I think we're very fortunate to have the people that we do, and it made our job very difficult. But Mikey Benner, you know, some of the things that he's demonstrated over the past few years, he's very proactive, very reliable police officer. And he shows a very strong work ethic, and he's able to carry out any of the assigned tasks very well. One of the other things that we're always looking for is somebody who, before they get promoted, are a leader. Somebody that doesn't become the formal leader with the stars, the bars, and the stripes, but somebody that becomes a leader amongst their peers. And Mikey has demonstrated that he's had the ability to do that. And so we're very proud to bring him before you tonight. He has matured into quite the police officer, and I think he'll make a great supervisor. One of the other things that we're looking for is police officers that are very street smart. They understand the police work side of it, how to do investigations. That's why we made him a detective, and he's done a very good job at that. But we're also looking at police officers who are community oriented. The department is a community oriented, it's a problem solving agency. We try to engage the community as much as we can and solve problems and prevent them from reoccurring. And that's what our department, that's what our mission kind of focuses around. And Detective Benner is both of those things. He's a very well-balanced police officer. It's kind of funny that he will fit in for Sergeant Giampa very well because he's very compassionate and very empathetic, and he's a sincere person. So I think he's gonna do a great job. And because of all of those reasons, myself and the command staff were unanimous that the board consider Mike to be promoted to the position of sergeant.
Great. I would ask you to come up to the microphone if you have a couple words you want to say. Yes. Or even if you don't, please come up.
So it's an honor to be before you guys. This has been kind of a lifelong dream of mine. I've always wanted to be a police officer. Grew up in Braintree. Me and my wife moved here when we were 22. We had a small apartment. We love the town. We bought a house here. We have 3 kids here. We go to public schools. I coach pretty much every single sport this town has to offer. I was lucky enough to get hired as a police officer 7 years ago. I love it. I love to be a police officer. I love this department. It's an honor to work with them every day.
Great. I'll just say congratulations. I think you're a great choice. And I know that, you know, the department is great and they always look to take care of each other. And I think it's great that you went through the internal process. I didn't know there were 10 people who had applied for the position. So you had a lot of good competition. And I would just say congratulations. And
Thank you, I appreciate
open it
it.
up to the board. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Jim?
Just echo congratulations. Really nice to see a promotion from within. Going through your background and the documentation that we received is superb, and very, very excited for you. So congratulations.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Make a motion?
I'll make a motion to promote Detective Michael Benner to Police Sergeant.
I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
If we could just spend 1 minute to
Sure.
him.
And then I'd like him to come up so we can shake his hand too. So.
Thank you, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, you gotta do that.
Sorry.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. All right, let the photos begin.
Thank you, guys. Again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't all have to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't want to. I'll just let you know that.
I know, right? Oh, yeah. What's that?
Just to remind you, Jim, I was never
Okay,
interviewed.
Don.
We can do your interview now if you want.
Your exit interview?
With the time being 7:10, is there anybody here for open forum? Seeing nobody here for open forum, we'll continue on. Next item is new business, vote the reappointment of Lorraine Dundon as an associate member of the Recreation Committee. And she was an associate member, so we're reappointing her, so.
Right, she forgot to file with me in April.
We appreciate her volunteering for Recreation Department.
I'll make a motion to reappoint Lorraine Dundon as an associate member to the Recreation Committee.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next up is a general discussion and possible vote on the 2020 town budget. Jim, you want to start us off?
Sure. I am pleased tonight to explain to the Board of Selectmen that the budget you have before you is a balanced budget. This is a little early compared to what we usually do it. It's usually at the beginning of February, end of January. But I'm doing this now to get some guidance and direction from the board. Just some highlights I'd like to highlight before we open it up for discussion. The budget utilizes the full limits of Proposition 2.5. New growth's budgeted $850,000. This is an increase of just about $100,000 compared to what was budgeted last year at this time. The budget assumes level funding from the state. I don't expect that we will know anything from the state until probably end of this month, beginning of next month, and that's just the governor's numbers. Local receipts, such as fees and permits and revenues, have been increased at the request of multiple members of the board. I would note that I've gone back to 2012 and looked at all of the estimated receipts and compared them to the actual receipts. I also went back and looked at the 7-year, 5-year, and 3-year averages of all those receipts. It's been made very clear to me that some feel as though we are underestimating the local receipts, and I am listening. As a result, I have been less conservative in our revenue projections for FY 2020 than I have in prior fiscal years. As for the budget itself, I would note that the overall budget increase is just about 4.2%. The Walpole Police Department is set to see an increase of about $277,000, or just about 5%. This recommendation adds one new position of sergeant to the Walpole Police Department. I would note that the FBI recommends that community have a minimum of 2 officers per 1,000 residents. While this does not get us to there, it only gets us to the 44 officers, it does get us a bit closer. The Walpole Fire Department is set to see an increase of about $167,000, or 4.1%. The chief did ask for an increase of about $318,000. I wasn't able to get there. He did ask for a day position, but it just, the numbers didn't work out. But we are able to meet all the minimum manning requirements as we negotiated. The Walpole Public Schools, this number is about a 3.84% increase. The Walpole Public Schools has not set or finalized their budget yet. I just want to make that very clear. They're still going through their vetting process with their personnel and their principals and the school committee. I'm expecting it to come in somewhere at or about 4%. I'm confident that the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee and the School Committee can work together to address the department's needs as the budget process works itself out. Tri-County has a 17% increase. This is just an estimate based upon an email from the superintendent there. Again, their school committee has not voted on their budget. The Vehicle Maintenance Division is set to see about a 12% increase. This can be attributed to a new mechanic position. This would take our total mechanics up from 4 working mechanics to 5, including the superintendent. And over the last 15 to 20 years, the department has seen an increase of vehicles and equipment from about 90 to 145. The COA is set to see an increase of just about 31%, due in part to a part-time position and an increase in expense line mostly for electricity. As the budget process is vetted out, I would strongly, I can't stress this enough, advocate for a new additional funding for this department to offset the expected demand that we are already seeing at the COA building. I drove by there today and the parking lot was completely full. Parks Division set to see about a 7.8% increase due to the addition of a new position in that department. We've eliminated a few summer positions to try to offset the cost to make things work. Assessment and fringe benefits, that portion consists of retirement, OPEB, unemployment, and insurance is budgeted to see a 6.2% increase. And this is very preliminary. I'm pleased to report that at this time, we will expect to see some changes in that department. All of the employee groups have gotten back to me today and notified me that they have voted to ratify the MOA between the town and the various employee groups, and I will have that for you to consider on January 22nd. OPEB contribution has increased from $300,000 to $390,000, 30% increase. And we've also added a new line in there we titled the transfers, which would take $300,000 going forward and put that into stabilization. Again, I've been listening to some members of this board and the Finance Committee, and I'm trying to budget for the stabilization there. So in summary, what I'm looking for tonight is a vote from the Board of Selectmen to concur with the proposed revenue projections so we can move forward and begin to put the budget books together and I can finalize the budget message prior to its delivery on January 31st. So I'll take any questions. I know I have some department heads here. That's it.
Great. Ann, would you like to start off?
Sure. Just preliminarily, because I don't know that I'm prepared to vote on this tonight because I think I have a lot of questions, and I'd like to hear from the FinCom. Have they started deliberating yet
No.
on any of this?
That's why I'm doing this with your board, because some of the criticism I took, and I really did try to vet it out, was we don't like what your revenue estimates are. My revenue estimates are set now. So if the board doesn't agree or wants me to modify those, or modify the levy limit, or the new growth figures, I need to know tonight, because I'll make those changes so I can present the balanced budget to this board and FinCom before the 31st.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. We're not voting on the entire budget and every expense item.
No.
You're looking for a vote to give you direction on revenue estimates, which
Yes.
are the items you just went through, so.
Yeah.
And I am prepared to ask questions about the revenue estimates. You know, although I did have a couple of questions about the electricity cost. I note in your 2020 projections on the estimated local receipts, there, motor vehicle exit, there's a significant increase of somewhat over $1 million from fiscal year 19 budget. And I know what you heard as a criticism, that you were underestimating projected revenues. I don't think it was a criticism. I think it's just more of an observation. My observation, and I don't know about the boards, of underestimating revenue in a vacuum. I don't think we can look at it in a vacuum and say that that is wrong per se. I agree with you to some extent that it's conservative to underestimate revenue and to budget accordingly. Where I think our failure has been is to not take the surplus that has been derived from the surplus revenue and apply it to reduce taxes. I think by you proactively looking ahead and doing a more realistic, or what you think is a more realistic revenue projection for our local receipts, puts us in a great position to perhaps take that $1 million and offset it against the 2.5 maximum levy or tax increase, where we would not have to, take the extra revenue that we're expecting and apply it to the 2.5% increase, and perhaps only tax 1.5 or 2% this year. Or alternatively, perhaps, are we legally required to raise the revenue from the debt exclusion figures?
Yes. We would,
So we could not just say we don't need to raise $1 million of this and
No.
transfer over.
that was
the-
passed, those items that you're referring to, which is line 4 there, those are passed as debt exclusion overrides. They're eventually gonna fall off the books, and I would note that the Boyden School is there because about 4 years ago it was on. The Adams Farm recently fell off about within the last 4 or 5 years. The last payment on that was, I believe, about $420,000.
Right. And I did ask you this question too. I don't want to veer off the path of the revenue, but again, I think if the board looks at Town of Walpole actual and estimated local receipts, and we see the large increase, I think it should be taken as a package of the whole revenue package and used to offset what we would levy in taxes. And because I think that is the appropriate function of additional, $1 million over last year is a lot of money.
That is why I'm having this discussion.
Right, and I think it's a great discussion to have. So that would be my recommendation, to use, I know we have over $1 million, but we could certainly apply $1 million to the tax levy. And to go back to my question today from my email to you, these debt exclusion amounts, I know that this is the revenue section, but these amounts will be going to pay these debt obligations,
Yes.
correct? And these debt obligations are different than the debt obligations we have that are
Completely different.
completely different.
So if you'd like, I don't think the rest of the board knows what the question was, but if you don't mind, can I indulge everyone else?
Please.
So what I believe the question was relating to item number 4 of the property levy limit. Line item totaled $1,152,000. That was for our debt exclusion figures, basically our overrides. The library's listed there, the high school's listed there. So Ann's question was, does that line relate to the lines in the, recently for the COA, fire station, police station, those big projects and potentially the field? No. The answer is those projects aren't listed in line 4. They're actually raised through the debt budget in the general fund that Maryland puts together each year. So it's within the levy limit.
Right, okay. And I think my question was actually also the library construction. My confusion is that I did not realize that that was a debt exclusion override. I thought that was
Yeah,
part of a Prop
I think
2.5.
it passed by like 8 to something.
That wasn't a Prop 2.5 override
No, it was
by the
not.
town? It was just, Okay. All right,
Ann, do you mind if I go
thanks.
to Nancy right now?
Oh, go ahead, thanks.
Nancy?
Thanks, Jim.
I like us staying, well, let's just start. I don't like taxes at all. I really don't like paying them. It really stinks. But, I like the idea of budgeting within our 2.5, and that way we can plan on as a families and know about it. But I don't think that we should be looking at giving any money back until we've met our OPEB responsibilities. We've just built a senior center, and we've already seen the masses that are coming. And until we address the private citizens, senior citizens' needs in this town, I don't think we should do anything. We've heard about the public safety numbers, that they don't meet the national recommendation for standards of public safety. If we're not even at that yet, how do we talk about giving money back to people? And then we know about there being public mental health issues in this town, that we hear about the numbers all the time and things that are going on. We should be taking care of our citizens. Is there more that we should be doing for them? And then recycling, trash, going green. You know, it's an important thing to save the planet and to make us sustainable, but yet it costs money. That those are things that we should be looking into, that if there is the over of the 2.5, why not invest in the town? You know, there's other towns that have, Wellesley is one of them. I don't know if you recently in the paper, there was an article about it, what they did as far as recycling go. And there was a big investment in the beginning, but it made their town huge for the amount of recycling that they're doing. That until we have really met needs that this town has, I don't think that we should be looking to kind of just give a little back. I think we should stay within our 2.5%. I think we have made huge strides to build buildings, and that now we need to take care of people.
Thanks. Jim?
Well, and I'd argue we'd have to take care of the buildings too. So,
And the buildings,
you know, we just put the Council on Aging building up, and we know that we're gonna have to staff that building. And that's a big gap in the budget right now. And that is something that we're gonna have to do if we wanna maintain the programming levels that we said we were gonna do when we built the building. So I spent several hours going through these numbers, an hour plus with Jim here, another half hour, 45 minutes on the phone, and then several hours myself just going through the numbers, looking to see, did I think that the revenue projections were, you know, reasonable, knowing that that's been a topic of conversation within the board. And what Jim provided us was, first of all, a 5-year average of the numbers within, you know, his spreadsheets, but then also provided us the ability to go back and look 2, 3, and 4, and some years even beyond that, to see what the average run rates were. And as I looked at the forecast of revenues, they seemed very reasonable to me. One might say they're still a little bit conservative. I think we need to be a little bit conservative, to be honest with you. I don't want to get so far out in front of this. You know, I got the sense that the board wanted to be more aggressive around revenue, and I think that was appropriate. But I think we're gonna be careful not to get too crazy. And so I looked at them and as went through every single line item, concluded that your projections actually look very good, Jim. I am also pleased to see us putting money against OPEB. That is something that's important to me, and it's something that's been important to town meetings. So I think we've got to keep that in mind as we, you know, are looking to resolve these future liabilities that exist on our balance sheet. And there are a number of other things, and Nancy, you hit them, so I won't restate them, but there are a number of other things still to be looked at in the budget. We're in the early stages of this. I would say that, you know, you're looking for guidance on, you know, your projections, just given the feedback you've gotten from the board in the past year. We still have to go through a whole process with the FinCom and with the various committees and boards and so forth, and we're a long way away from having the budget finalized, and we don't have the school numbers yet. So I think there's more to come here, but if the question is, do we look at these revenue projections and feel that they're, you know, reasonable at this point? I have to say they are, based on all the facts that you put before us, Jim.
David, do you have any questions right
Yes.
now or comments?
So the changes in the revenue projections, what was the net change of those items, the excise tax, those items that would have been?
So if you'd like me to, there's two major ones on the local receipt side, which is the motor vehicle excise tax, and I would say the license and permits. Those two alone account for close to just over $5 million there. Actually, almost $5.5 million of a total of 7.4. So what we did the previous few years is, in 2000, the only real numbers I had to work off of, actual numbers, we'll go with license and permits first. We collected in FY18 actual, the year we just finished out, $1.8 million. We had budgeted last year at this time, just about, we estimated, we didn't think it was gonna be the same, about $900,000. But some of the thoughts that went around during town meeting was that these numbers should be bumped up. So I went back and looked, what's our 3-year average, what's our 5-year average, and our 7. On those two particular items, I was more comfortable dealing with the most recent data, which was just about the 3-year average on the permits was 1.4 million, give or take 7,000 or so. So I bumped up that to 1,250,000. I thought that was consistent with what was there. And as far as the motor vehicle excise tax, the numbers have historically been on the rise. There's been a couple of years where it's dipped a little bit. But again, just looking at the most recent data, the average has been almost 4,388,000. So I bumped that up to 4.2 million, about 100,000 less than what the average is being. And again, I've said it all the time when I put together these budgets, I want to be a little conservative, but I get aggressive on these two. So those were the two highlights, and that's kind of my thought process there.
Right, and how does that compare to your estimates for the previous year?
The previous year, as I've noted, I've been conservative, and I bumped that up in comparison to.
Do you know what that number is? 'Cause
the previous year being this year, $3,970,000 for motor vehicle excise tax, and the previous year on the license and permits, $900,000.
Okay, so the total difference is around 300, $500,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And just one question about, which one was it? Hotel tax, is that the right
Yes.
number?
That is a number that I'm comfortable with at this time, and let me preface that a little bit. Our actual collected as of 12/18/18 on hotels tax is 131. No, I'm sorry, that was on meals tax. On hotel tax, it was 105. So I'm just a little concerned at where's the trend in that? We don't have we only have 1 quarter worth of taxes there on those hotels. So 300, it may come in at 450 or something.
Okay, so the actual number for 2018 is only a quarter's worth of?
For that particular one, and for meals tax, and for motor vehicle excise tax. Motor vehicle excise, we've collected, as of 12/18, 465, and we still have a good portion.
Commitment 1.
That's only commitment 1.
No, we haven't done commitment 1 yet, which
Okay.
is 25,000 bills.
I was wondering why that number was so different.
Yeah.
I understand that. Okay. Back to the police increase, you said that the current complement is 44 officers, and how many is the average?
43 officers. This would bump it up to 44.
Okay, and what's what's
The
the?
desired levels, from talking to the chief and the deputy, is 2 officers per every 1,000. So right now, based on 25, we should, ideally would like to be at 50.
50? Okay. And then, all right. And actually, going back to the other stuff we were talking about, the motor vehicle excise tax, does the state give you any guidance or help on these predictions? Because they should.
No, but I went to our auditors this year, and when we talked around, actually went back to my notes, and we talked about this on 10-1 with the joint meeting with the FinCom, the Selectmen, and School Committee, and after that, I went to our auditors and I said, what do you think? This year we were about $3 million off, and he said, that's a little high. They'd like to see us continue to be conservative, but get it closer to, $1 to $2 million, not be as much as difference between last year and difference between the last actual years we have was $3.5 million higher.
I mean, I definitely agree that you don't want to be way off, but there's certainly, and I also, wonder, even in a recession year, whether or not it drops off dramatically, because most people are on leases and loans anyway. So although not as many new cars are coming in, the values aren't dropping off the cliff as quickly as you know. So I wondered if surprised the state doesn't have some kind of understanding of what those numbers should be as far as, some kind of prediction.
It would be nice if they gave better guidance.
Yeah.
Based on what they were seeing, but the numbers do seem to drop off. If you look back at what would it have been 2008, there was a drop off from 5, 6, and 7, which were kind of boom years, and I that's one of the ones where I'm comfortable with the excise number that Jim's got here, but I wouldn't want to get much more aggressive because
I mean,
you saw the stock market bounce in the last 2 weeks, and it doesn't take much to get people to hold off another year on a vehicle or something. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I agree with that, and I just want, and I did notice that dip in the past. But it seems like that there should be able to be more guidance on how to predict this stuff, but that's fine. So my concern now is that, you're just asking us to say, this is how much money can come in, but with these numbers.
So just to give you some perspective, I went back and I wanted to figure out how much did departments actually ask for versus what I have to work with within the confines of 2.5. So if I granted every request, the total budget came to $97,671,878. So the actual recommended was $95,452,168. So that's a difference of just about $2.2 million. So I had to cut 2.2 out of what was being requested, just to stay with what's in the levy limit there, and with what's proposed for new growth at 850, and making these changes to the local receipts. And that's what I'm looking for from the board is, are you comfortable with these numbers? If you're not, let me know and I can adjust accordingly. But if you are, we can begin the process.
We're not saying to raise, necessarily by this vote, saying to raise to the maximum 2.5%, but you're just saying that if we did that, this is the number that would come in.
But
Is that
that's the
what you're
guidance he's
asking?
looking for, is he's
That's what I'm
saying, is
looking
this
for.
the revenue that we're comfortable with as a board, so that he can go through and finalize everything, and they can print the books and all that kind of stuff, so.
But, okay, I mean, we're
Because
long
this
from,
is part of our revenue.
right, but we're long from printing books, we don't even know what the school department is coming.
I print without this, and I hope they don't take offense to this, but the school department does their thing. I develop my budget at this time, right now, based on the 66-34 split that we've used for, close to 20 years. I know that their budget number, just from talking to the superintendent, is gonna be 4.1, maybe more. And I can't wait on the school department because they still have their process. They're still vetting it with their principals, and they're still going through with the school committee holding their hearings. So at this point, I always kind of go with my number, and after the finance committee gets their books, that's when we vet some of the insurance numbers may come in differently. The insurance numbers, I'm sure will change. I know they will change. I think Tri-County will change. There's usually 4 or 5 budgets that change. It's the same with state aid.
So the 6634 number, how much does that give the school department? Gives them 34% of the 74.9, is that?
Yeah, that gives them an increase of $1,694,419.
And and is that in line with what the 4% that they're asking for?
That gives them a 3.84% increase.
You all set for now, David?
Yeah.
I'll make just a couple of comments. So, I am very comfortable with the budget you've put together, Jim, and you know, you and I have spent some time together, you know, talking about it. I like the idea of being a little more aggressive on revenue recognition, but I caution everybody to remember that, you know, this is a process. So we recognize revenue, and if we recognize it like we're doing now, that money's available for the operating budget and for capital spending that's built into the budget. But money that doesn't get spent because we were conservative on some revenue estimates, or money that's not spent in a budget drops down and becomes free cash. That gets us back to that free cash topic. And Ann referred to it as surplus. I don't consider free cash or unexpended money to be surplus or free cash. I think that's part of the process. We anticipate and count on money dropping down as free cash so it can be spent next year for capital projects. You know, you look at the last 5 years, you know, we've ordered a ladder truck, we've ordered police cars, we've ordered a pumper, we've ordered DPW equipment. We use some of that money for doors and windows on schools and town buildings. So to me, it's a process. You know, you start with this happens, you look at what comes out the next year and becomes available. So I don't buy the concept that it's surplus revenue. I think it's part of a process. We could, in fact, be more aggressive on the front end with these numbers and actually identify how much money we want to put into the budget as a hard number for capital spending. The risk is if that money doesn't actually come in, then we're kind of stuck in the budget year with our projections, where our plan is to spend this, but we don't actually have the revenue. Then we have to make mid-year budget adjustments. It's like when the state cut money out of our budget, I don't remember which year it was, 2008 or whatever, where mid-year we got a budget cut. And we had to deal with, I think it was $500,000 or close to $600,000. And we had reserve, we used reserves, we cut back. We had to do a whole bunch of scrambling mid-year. So I'm comfortable with the process in general. I like the numbers that you've come up with. I'm also somebody who, as I look at the town, I try to look at the big trend, and we've trended over the last 5 or 6 years from 24,000 people to 25,000 people, and it's really clear that we're going to hit 26,000 people much quicker than we transition from 24 to 25, just based on, the Moose Hill Road, and I can't remember the new name they have on that project, but the Moose Hill Road apartments, the 2 downtown projects, the AQV going in, at the woodworker site, and there's a bunch of others. So, there's 500, 600 apartment units or condos coming online, which will average more than one person. So I think it's important to keep an eye on the big picture. I do like spending to the allowable, what the state allows, up to 2.5%, and take a big picture. You've all heard me say, anybody who's watched us on TV, that we could put millions of more dollars into roadways and infrastructure, as an example. And we know we have schools coming up as an issue. The schools are aging. A couple of them are over 50 years old. So I'm very comfortable with this budget. I think it sets us up for a good trend long term. I think this is the way to go.
So just to understand that a little bit better, so you're saying that in those years where we underpredicted the motor vehicle excise tax, that money did not end up available for the operating budget?
No, because that money would come in to the town, and since it wasn't authorized to be spent on anything, it becomes free cash or unspent money, which then gets certified by the state, and then so in the next year it would become available.
So our schools lost out on the opportunity to get the 34% of that total that they would have gotten if that money had been predicted more accurately. Is that correct?
Well, it's yes, you could say, well, they would have gotten 66% of that money.
66.
Yeah, so they get the 2/3, the town has the 1/3.
So by under-predicting by $500,000 over the last 5 years, there's 66% of that money that the schools didn't get because of that under-prediction, and it's basically holding that money, taking it out of the operating.
No, I would say that if your goal was to put more money in the operating budget in any given year, you should raise revenue predictions, and hopefully that money comes in. If you remember the whole process, the money not spent in the operating budget goes through the free cash process, gets certified by the state, and then can be used next year for doors and windows on schools, roofs, the computers that we purchase, all those kind of things. So the money does flow back into the schools through the secondary process. So, you know, it's a matter of where you're trying to. It's a guessing game because, like, right now we don't even know what the state number's going to be, and it's a shame that the state doesn't give us our numbers early in the game so we can build a budget around what they're saying.
Frankly, your budgets have underestimated motor vehicle excise taxes, which would have been $500,000 this year, was hundreds of thousands of dollars last year. So we will look over the last 5 years. We basically, by keeping that money out of the budget process, have taken over $16 million out of the school's budget, and that's
Over how many years?
over the last 5 years.
No.
Because if you
$500,000 they would have gotten.
$10 million then.
Well,
But-
less than that.
But you admit that by doing it that way, you've taken money out of the school budget, by holding this money and not budgeting it and putting it.
I think it's important
have
to
it show up as free
estimate
cash.
revenue as, well, but free cash is also part of next year's budget. So that cash becomes available to use for capital spending. And an awful lot of the money we spend on capital is the school buildings, because they're so large. So we do need money for roofs, doors, windows, boilers, all those kind of things. And when we go back and look at capital spending, you know, a huge amount of that money goes right back into those school buildings. So it's a matter of what are you trying to accomplish? How aggressive do you want to be on the front end? If we were more aggressive even than Jim has suggested, we could put more money into the operating budget this year for the schools and for the town. But what that means is next year, less money will become available in free cash through that other process. And so there won't be as much money for computers and doors and windows and all that. So it's a process.
Right, so you have approved of the process of changing the level of how conservative you are.
Well, I think every year.
So that you can get some money out of this budget process to have available for the capital spending process.
I think we do that every year. We try to have a realistic number.
And that's
so
all
that
I've been saying.
We can handle, okay.
But
Just to
this-
share.
But we
this
do
year
need to
is-
have money for capital, right?
Well, I think we should be doing it all at the same time.
Okay, that would be a big budget change. I mean, we could talk about that with FinCom and school committee and everybody else.
This 34% for school committee is a
66%.
66%, 34. It should be based on needs, not like just a.
Sure, it's a
some
guideline
number.
that we've been using for about 20 years or so. Ian?
Sure, I'd like to, sort of like to recap what I said earlier in light of what I've heard the board say. So what I note is, am I correct, that your projected revenue 2020 over 2019 is 3.5% projected,
An increase of 4.2%.
a total of 4.2%. All right, so that was a little low. So, I think that this town, this board, and our town government would be sending a very positive message to the taxpayers to show that while we project a 4.2% increase in revenue over last year because we're feel comfortable with the local receipt projections. And I agree, I do feel comfortable with your projections, Jim. That the message that we would be sending is say, well, we don't need to increase our total budget by 4.2%, even though we can get that. And instead increase it perhaps by 3 or 3.5%, but keep the local receipt estimates the same because it's a more accurate prediction based on the past, and instead reduce the tax levy amount by one half or 1%. And that would accomplish we'd still have theoretically, actually, a 3.5% increase over last year's revenue in last year's budget. And we'd be getting ahead, so we would not have the free cash issue, as you said, as part of the end. At the end of the budget process, we'd be getting ahead of that, but not taxing. And I know that this board, Jim, we've all gotten emails or notifications from various taxpayers this week, the last couple of weeks, about their tax bills. It's really, I really think that we are at a point with many, many taxpayers in town that I think it would be a very positive and supportive and understanding message that we could send.
Yeah, so like everything, it's a balance. So if we were to do what you're suggesting, Ann, and take the $1 million out of the levy, and I'll just throw that as a round number out there, that would then cause Jim to have an unbalanced budget, which would then require that we go back and make cuts in the budget.
Right,
So
exactly.
reduce services, okay, to the town.
Or reduce something.
Reduce services
Right,
would be what it would.
reduce services, and if some people consider that we're over-serviced, some people don't. Obviously, we differ
Yeah,
those
and
opinions.
that's
But
what
yes,
we-
it would require a reduction in the appropriations.
Right, so that's what we get to debate here is, the appropriate level of service, and that's what we're doing. From where I sit, I think it's a mistake to do that, because I think, first of all, Jim has already had to unfund or underfund by $2 million on the request line this year. To take another $1 million out, we're gonna, take police officers out, we're gonna take firefighters out, what are we gonna do, right? I think you have to look at this in terms of what makes the most sense for the town, and I think Jim has done a good job of thinking through particularly those big budget items like fire, like police, like council on aging, and where we think we're gonna have gaps. So I wouldn't be in favor of reducing the levy, and I have a whole other reason for that. I still believe that creates a structural deficit. I know you don't agree with that, but I see that as a structural deficit that you'd create. So I think it'd be a mistake to do that. If you think ahead a year or two or three and the local receipts go down and you have reduced the levy, then you create a problem in the out years, okay? And I think we need to avoid that. I think we've done a good job in our town of figuring out creative ways to meet the needs of the town, in a way that is best for our town, and meet the needs that we have coming before us. I just think it'd be a mistake to disrupt the process that we've, I think, done a good job on in the last many years, and put ourselves at risk as we go ahead in the next couple of years. So, totally get the point you're making, and you and I have had this conversation before, and we're just on different sides of the coin on it. There's nothing wrong with that, we just are. But I think the question that Jim's asking us tonight is, from a revenue projection point of view, do we agree with his projections? I do. I think he is also asking us, because he's got it built in to use the full up to the 2.5% on the levy, and I think that's a smart thing to do as well for the reasons that I've given. Okay.
And I hear what you're saying, and the reason we disagree on the definition of deficit is a deficit is only created if revenues don't meet expenditures. And if we are comfortable with Jim's projected revenue for local receipts, and we're comfortable with the revenue, even if we reduced it by $1 million or whatever number we can choose, and he reduces his expenditures, it would not be a deficit situation.
True.
And to circle back to, at some point, I mean, this town has increased its spending year over year, 4.5% every single year. That is a tremendous amount of expenditure increase or budget increase. And I hear what you're saying, Mark, Chairman Gallivan. Although our population is expected to increase perhaps up to 26,000 in the very near future, our population has only increased by 8% up until 2017 for the last 10 years. So the 50% budget increase over the last 10 years for the 8% population increase, there is a disconnect. And I want to go back to, at what point can we make a decision as a board or as the representative of the people to say we will rein in spending as much as we can? And I think we could do that here with this 4.2% growth. I think we can scale it back, and I would like to persuade the board to do so. We'll
Thanks.
see.
Nancy?
So I'm very confused how when we have debt, like liability, we have things that we owe the people in this town, when we have OPEB hanging out there that needs to be paid off, and it hasn't been. When we have roads, when we have waterways, I mean, we just did our first partial dredging, and we have so many ponds, and it causes such damage around by not maintaining them, which wasn't done for years. Recycling, China has closed over the last couple of years, and we have all of this trash and recycling that we have nothing to do with, and it's a problem everywhere. Our aging population is a fact. We've built a senior center. We are going to have so many needs. That's a fact. How are we going to take care of that? That I don't understand how you can think we have this overage. Are there towns that aren't doing this? Are we abnormal? Are we in line with Massachusetts? I mean, this to me is crazy. I mean, we have obviously had seniors that have been going outside of this town for years to get services, and we have been dumping on other towns.
Right, but to answer your question, yeah, there's approximately 300 municipalities in Massachusetts that don't tax to the maximum levy limit, and they do have excess capacity on their levy limit. And I'm not just 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, but hundreds of thousands.
Which towns?
Well, I'll send you the list, but they're.
Well, I mean, I'd like us to all hear the
300
list, because
300 out of
I can't
350
imagine that we want to be those towns.
300 out of 351 towns. So
That's,
I don't have those towns with me because I wasn't, this was.
well, I'm just saying, if you're gonna
I-
say that there's that many, I would like at least a few examples, because it makes a difference. Do we wanna be those
I
towns,
can
or
tell
do we
you
wanna be this
cities,
town?
Big cities, small cities, municipalities.
So when you talk cities, they get an
Holliston,
entirely different funding
Holliston,
source from
Canton.
the state.
Cities, towns, various, of all sizes, all size budgets, similar populations, different populations. I would send you my spreadsheet where I identified towns with similar populations and a similar budget that do not tax to their maximum levy limit.
I understand the concept, but without
Right,
getting
so-
into
right,
what does
but-
the state give them, what does the state give us?
But I'm
it's-
responding to her question, and
It's
I
hard to
can
compare
actually- I
without
can-
knowing and having any facts, so. Anything else, Nancy, or David, any final comments?
Well, I mean, one other question, and we've discussed this in the past, because I've discussed this with the town administrator. The budget from the schools is just for salaries and expenses. We provide a lot more in the budget for the schools. In fact, don't we, we're spending $793,000 a year just on debt for providing the buildings. Is that?
I don't know if that number's accurate, but we are providing, so built into the town budget, we deal with the building maintenance aspect of it, Dawn's department. We deal with all the snow plowing. We deal with, as part of the snow and ice budget, we cover that, but also as part of the DPW budget, the vehicles and everything's made up in there. Some of on the finance side, we deal with some of the billing. So yeah, there's a lot of other things that we deal with.
Electricity, heating?
Electricity, we pay for, just heating, sorry.
Okay, the schools pay for the electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking, it's like 300,000 for the elementary school per year that we're spending, 430,000. The debt budget for the buildings is not part of the school budget, it's part of the.
No, that comes off of, when we do the 6634, that comes off the top first, so that isn't factored into the 6634. We call that non-discretionary. That includes the trash, the insurance, and the debt borrowing.
Well, just the elementary school project and the high school, that's, 700,000 right there. So 793 is, I rounded it a little bit.
So that is actually on the page, sorry, I didn't number the page. That's part of our assessments, increased non-discretionary cost, and we include their part of that as the debt, the $4 million.
What page you on?
I'm sorry,
Unnumbered
2, 3,
page,
4, 5,
unnumbered page.
6, sorry, about page 6. School town split breakdown.
Okay.
And this is the type of discussion and direction I wanted from the board, because, the last couple of years, we've talked about the free cash article, we've talked about levy limit and not raising to it, and I wanted to get this out here now, instead of having a discussion in March or April, when the board has to vote on the budgets beforehand. I appreciate this, so thank you.
So my,
I'm sorry, one more question while it's on top. So you funded stabilization fund for how much?
300,000.
And is that usually what it's funded as part of this budget, or do you just usually wait till free cash comes
We
along?
usually wait till free cash comes along, yeah.
So you essentially did the same, we just, instead of having it part of free cash, you
It's in the budget
expended
now.
that money as part of the budget.
Nancy?
my thoughts are, I would like us to be going as you've projected, and keep in mind that there are several things that need to be taken care of in this town. And, one directed by town meeting, as I said, OPEB, ponds and roads, we have far to go with those. Education is one. I mean, David and I have kids in the school system. I mean, I don't feel like there's a lot of fluff around their education. Do you? Have you seen that? Like, I agree with you that I almost feel like maybe they've been squeezed a little bit in a way, and then in this process, we're then divvying or answering to them, but I think we're holding them accountable.
Oh, we don't hold them accountable at all.
I'm-
It's the
all right,
school committee
well,
that
not
does.
their-
I
well, we
I
don't hold
really-
that- we don't hold their
The school
budget.
committee decides the budget, not us.
The budget within the budget, but by keeping them to tighter numbers, I think that it keeps them tighter. You know what I mean? Like you're right, the school committee decides their individual budget, but it's not like they have fluff. I mean, have you seen fluff with your kids going through school?
Well,
I mean,
if you want to understand whether I have confidence in the current staff of the school department, the superintendent, for instance, that's a whole nother discussion.
I'm not asking about that, but I'm saying, as
And
we've
I'm
gone
not
through
about to have that discussion.
as we've
Yeah.
gone through the school process, I don't feel that I have seen anywhere along the way that we are over budgeting them as far as what our kids are seeing and where our kids are comparable to other kids. And that is the guidance, and that is the point of the school committee, for them to do that. But for our budget sense, I think we're going in the right direction. I think, as you said, the projects that we look at, the roofs, the windows and things like that, and when they come up, I think that's important.
So, let me make a motion. A motion for Jim to continue down the budgetary path he's going, utilizing the full 2.5% allowed by state law, and the estimates that he's provided for local receipts and to finish off the budget. So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Against?
No.
No.
Abstain, okay. 3-2.
Thank you. I appreciate the vote.
Yep.
Thanks, Jim. I have a couple of questions after anyways.
Consent agenda, you want
Yep.
to do that?
That'd be great.
The consent agenda, a motion to accept, these items will be taken all as one vote. Motion to accept with much appreciation the following gifts. The Kraus family to the Council on Aging for Educational Services account in the amount of $25,000. Various donors to the library gift account for $85, and Barbara Proctor to the ambulance gift account.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I would just like to mention, and we mentioned it,
I'm sorry.
I'm
is
sorry.
Which one is
85 the right number for the
Or $8.
library? For the library?
Oh, on one of them it says 885.
Let's see the actual form, yeah.
It is 85, okay.
No, he's got, it's
Oh,
800.
880.
I'm sorry, I meant that to state that the library gifts were $885.
I'll re-second that. So the motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 What I wanted to just mention for anybody who didn't catch the, live broadcast at the Council on Aging ribbon cutting, $1 million, the townspeople have donated and businesses have donated $1.4 million, of which the Cross donation is part of that. And I just say a big thank you. I was over at the Council on Aging today, and the architects design a building and people think about what rooms will get used for, but you never know until the people show up. And Jim mentioned the parking lot was full when he went by. When I was there early in the morning, about 9, it was about 3/4 full, but there were people in every room. There were a group of about 15 women upstairs who do knitting and quilting, sitting around they rearranged the room so it could be a giant table. It was just great to see so many people at the facility using it. And I did hear there was a group of guys talking, saying that normally he spends most of his day at home watching TV, but that he was appreciative of the fact that he could come in and meet other people and have a cup of coffee. And that's the whole idea of the council, is that you can walk in, grab a cup of coffee, go sit and find a few people to chat with. And, for a lot of people, they don't have family, they don't have, a spouse who's still alive. And it just gives them something to do and a purpose in life. And, if they then choose to do some of the activities, that's wonderful. But just having a place to go is great. And I encourage people who are watching on TV to swing by the council and get yourself a tour and see what's going on. It's really great stuff. Great to see.
Yeah, and avail themselves of the services.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Town administrator update.
Sure, 2 items. We're set to have the MBTA come in on 1/22, your next meeting. If there's anything you think I'm missing as part of the discussion points that we should be talking about, they're here in the TA updates. Please let me know if I am missing something. I want the T to be prepared to speak to all of these things and anything else that you think I might be missing here, so.
The only other thing would be what happens at the Y at the train station, what's gonna happen there, we never really got a
Oh, and
clear
it splits through the parking lot?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had, Walpole train station update, and I'll call it the Y split, yeah.
The last time I went to the train station, they were working on that branch-off track. And if they come through there with any kind of speed, it's gonna be really dangerous, because that's where everybody's walking or driving up to the platform.
It's very unprotected, like,
Right.
I would just ask, how many people do we think might come? And is this room really big enough, or should we take a look at maybe the high school
Council on Aging.
or the Council on Aging, just a place where we could get more people in,
We've
at
already
least.
overpacked the council once.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a lot of people. Whenever I send an email out about the MBTA or this at all, I get a considerable amount of replies.
Should we go to, where else is live? High school?
The high school, they'd have to bring the truck over, but they could go live easily from the council.
I think the
Why don't we go
council-
with the council? We already know we can
That's fine.
pack them in.
This council or
The old-
No,
The
the
new
new Council on
council.
Aging, yeah.
The
Because
South
it's already
Street.
wired up, so
South Street.
it should be easy for them to.
There can always be extra viewing upstairs, we know.
Yeah. Okay,
Work out what you do.
that works then. It'll be nice to have our first meeting there.
All of us.
Okay.
Okay, that could be a problem. We had to advertise a public hearing
A public hearing.
for the Beacon, and it's advertised for this room.
At what time?
She is on at 7.
Are they before?
They're before Massachusetts.
So why don't we just relocate so that they don't have to charge and redo it? What time is Mass
How many
DOT?
days do we have to post a public notice?
Public,
No,
do they have to notify
we had-
abutters?
We had 10 days from the receipt of the application. This is ABCC requirements. In Thursday's newspaper, in Town Weekly. We have to have the hearing no less than 10 days after, or no closer than 10 days after the hearing.
So do we miss the deadline if we let them know right away? Okay, that's what I was afraid
So
you'd say.
what time are they coming in, Foxborough?
I haven't, they asked to be first on the agenda, but I made no commitment to them.
No, they can't be
Oh.
No,
first.
there's somebody else.
So
That is
if-
so
If
mean
you
to
wanted to do
everybody else.
something at like 7:45 or 8 over there, but I also want to check with, I think Cindy's right, we probably have to have it at least in this room for the hearing, for the Beacon.
Right, so if they're 7:15,
Maybe we do 8 o'clock over there. We're just gonna need time
She
to
won't take
transition.
that long, right?
yeah, I mean, we could do 7:45 over there.
Okay.
Okay.
I just like to have a big enough room, because
Yeah.
this is not a
And
good
if
room.
there's a lot on the agenda, maybe we can meet at 6:30. If there's
Sure.
anything
Yep.
else. Right now, there's
Absolutely.
nothing else really on that agenda, right?
There's one other thing right before, but I don't remember what it's, nothing big.
When is that?
Oh, wait, isn't
What is-
housing, no, he's coming in February.
January 22nd.
Okay. I can do 6:30. I mean,
Can that work with everybody? Do it
Might not
Zoom,
need
do
it
a
though,
Zoom.
might not need it.
Might
Yeah.
not need it, yeah.
Might not need it, but
Okay.
All right, maybe you can figure that out and just let us know
Yeah, I will.
what will work. Okay.
Okay. And the only other item on here is the health insurance. I mentioned, I'm pleased to announce that all of the employee groups notified me today. Most of them have signed off on the MOA. Police and teachers were coming in after this meeting to sign it, so I think police signed it when they left. So I'll present that to you on the 22nd.
Great.
So,
Could I have some questions?
yes.
Thanks. I know you had mentioned before that the town would see, as an employer, would see cost savings in this, and I apologize, I'm just having a little vertigo. And how much was that, Scott?
Projected,
Projected
over the
savings.
current numbers, current in-year numbers, minimum of 2%, likely more.
2% of what? Of
Of-
the millions of dollars of cost?
Yeah.
So 2% of, was it in here, 4 million?
I don't, I think the
sorry.
total insurance budget was maybe $11 million.
Sorry, let me see.
And I say today's numbers because they can't give me next year's numbers yet. Those won't be available until February. So I just have to base everything off of.
10.5? I'm sorry, yeah, 10,500,000. So 2% of the, I'll just round it up to 11 million.
Yeah.
What does that come out to?
Yeah, about 200,000, I estimated. I think 237 or somewhere around there.
Okay. And Jim and I have had a very brief discussion.
Yep, oh,
I
sure.
think I was doing the discussion, he was just listening. My concern with and I applaud the great effort you went to save the town some money, but my concern is that if it places a financial burden on the employees, you know, is it worth the cost savings of 200,000 each year? You know, my feelings have been, and I feel like this is analogous to when the Board of Selectmen, I wasn't on the board at the time, was considering single-stream recycling, and that there'd be projected savings to the town going forward. But when one hears cost savings, you know, from my perspective, and I think other people's perspective, they think that those cost savings would inure to the taxpayer, again, in the form of reducing their costs. You know, the savings that this town is going to obtain with these new insurance plans is maybe a financial hit to the employees, but it's not saving taxpayers any money in the form of reduced taxes. So to me, it's just moving the savings from one bucket to another bucket. You know, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. I think that anytime the town achieves a cost savings, the savings should go back to the taxpayer.
I would just say I disagree with that. I think it's important for the town to always be looking for ways to save money on on the services that we provide. And that's true with insurance as well. So, you know, anything that we can save means we can do a little bit more in another area. So I don't think savings in, you know, if we spend a little bit less on office supplies, I don't think that savings should be going back to the taxpayer. I think that should stay within the town government to provide more of a service that's in great demand.
We
For
also have a
example-
lot of employees that are taxpayers.
Oh,
Yep, that's true.
absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. If taxes were to be, I feel like they're getting a double hit. If there's an increased financial burden on the insurance side with no offset and a reduction in real estate taxes, that is a double hit, as opposed to a Walpole resident who's also an employee. If they were hit with a financial, additional financial burden on the health insurance side, an offset in the reduction of taxes would help them. Now I feel like it's a double hit, in particular for town employees who are residents of Walpole.
Just ask one question, to clarify that. So if you'd stayed with the same plan, it was the same plan as that they're currently under available for the next year?
Yes, it could have been available,
Okay.
yeah.
And the difference between that plan and the plan that we ended up with is only 200,000, or would be?
It's estimated, and again, Mr. Conservative here. I'm conservatively estimating it, because what we introduced here was, right now, the town doesn't have a deductible. We're introducing a small, modest deductible. We're increasing some copays, but we're also offering a similar plan that's offered at the state through the GIC, which I anticipate some of the younger employees and some of the people who are new hires who only contribute, or who are the 60-40 hires, may move to that plan, because it is a lot less expensive. But I don't know how many are going to migrate to that plan until open enrollment in May. And then another perk that we put in there is the employees will get a payout option of, I think it's $3,000 for the family plan. The town would save about $15,000. The employees would get $3,000 if they opt out of the family plan, if they've been enrolled for 2+ years.
But they have to have other insurance, so.
Yes, they have to
That happens a lot
demonstrate that
in the
they-
commercial world, where if you've already got insurance, companies will, you know, incentivize you not to have two plans going at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
So what is the deductible amount?
It's, right now it's 0. It's proposed to be 100 for individual, 250 for family.
So Ann, are you suggesting that this isn't good for the town and we should just
And
keep doing
complain?
what we're doing?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm suggesting is,
That's,
you know, it's,
that's a good, that's still a good plan.
And the
With
high
what-
plan
with-
is
But meaning,
500, 1,000.
I'm just so,
What-
either we give it back to all the taxpayers across the board, or we don't do this and the employees stay with the plan that they have. Which one are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting if the employees are happy with the plans that they have, I think when the town calls for a change for cost savings and it places a financial burden on the employees, in that cost savings, although it goes to the town, it's just going into a different department. It's not it's moving cost savings from one department perhaps to another. You know, my idea as a selectman has always been for the town to achieve cost efficiencies, whether by privatizing certain things or however you could achieve cost savings. It could be insurance, regionalizing different things. But the cost savings only benefits, I think, the taxpayer if the taxpayer sees those savings in the form where they don't have to be taxed as much every year. Otherwise, we're still doing the same loop of maximum taxation in maximum spending. So if we're going to reduce spending by different means, some which don't affect the town employees, which is very good, I'd like to, that's what I've been trying to work towards for the last 2 years, is seeing the savings go into the taxpayer's pocket in the form of not taxing to the max 2.5%, or returning free cash at the end of the fiscal year.
So then is your offer that we should, that Jim should abandon this because it's hurting the employees and not going back to the taxpayers? Like,
I think if the employee.
should we all be taking a look at this?
No, I think we should absolutely take a look at it, and if the employees agree to it, then that's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna oppose it if the employees are happy with it. Ideally, I'd like to see more plans offered to the employees and more choices, because everyone has a different financial and health picture. Some employees prefer higher premiums, lower deductibles, or no deductibles. Some employees would prefer lower premiums and sky's the limit deductibles. We don't seem to offer that at the moment. All I'm saying is, it doesn't make me comfortable to support new health insurance plans that put more of a financial burden on employees. But although it's talked about that the town sees a savings, it's a savings in one aspect, but going to, again, just another, it's just gonna be spent somewhere else. That's all.
In a
So it's-
similar
so
vein.
it's much like this, the talk about when we were gonna do single stream recycling, and there was that big effort to do that. And, everyone was talking, we're gonna save hundreds of thousands of dollars. The town saving hundreds of thousands of dollars is not the same as the taxpayers saving hundreds of thousands of dollars if the town continues to tax to the max. And that is the philosophy of the board, to tax to the max regardless of how much
Well,
costs.
wait, you can't say that we're gonna tax to the max regardless. We are taking care of issues that have been neglected for years.
Well,
years.
it goes back to the whole issue of having everything in the same pot in the whole budget process. Capital budget, operating budget, all in the same pot. Because what happens is, and I'm sure the unions realize this and everybody realizes this, when we spend too much money on some projects, if we, build too extravagant in the spending on fields, or we dredge ponds and spend money there, that puts pressure on other parts of the budget. Whether people want to believe it or not, it's just one pie. So those discussions should be had all at the same time. Do we give the employees a better health care plan, or do we dredge a pond? Do we dredge a pond, or do we buy books? Those all discussions should be happening the same time in the same budget process, and not just when the money at the end of the year is underestimated, and then, we have this extra money, let's go dredge the pond, let's buy some fields. That's how the real choices should be made between real issues, and not just have a town meeting in the fall, that the town meeting only given an amount of money to spend and one choice to spend on each one of those items, okay? Either you spend this or you don't, and it's pre-chosen what that item is going to be. And it's not a full discussion. Finance committee is and it's an end around of finance committee, because they should be making these decisions. It's an end around of capital budget. It should all be part of the same budget all at once. And
I would just say,
that's why-
I disagree. Town meeting does get to vet everything that's proposed.
They only get one
As
choice,
does-
though.
As does finance committee, as
Up or
does
down
capital
on one
budget.
choice, one item.
Oh, but somebody's got to start the budget, and our charter calls for the town administrator to start the budget process, and that's the way we do things. If we want to go back and have a charter review and change the way we do it, we could certainly do that, but
That doesn't require a charter review, because the charter actually says that the capital budget's supposed to be in the spring.
But what I'm
so-
confused about is that you want it to be one
Doesn't?
budget
No, it
process, but yet we allow there to be, the
not
finance.
binding, David.
Finance committee, capital budget,
not
and then
binding,
town
but it needs
meeting.
a charter
So we
change.
get a whole bunch of groups of people to be able to go over this whole process. Whereas if you wanted one process, we're looking at one group dictating. And then we'll be talking about that there's one group dictating what the town budget is. I mean, this is the way our town is.
This is zoning. I
So-
thought the charter's here.
That's your policies.
No, I thought the charter was back
So I mean,
there,
to
too.
me, it sounds like we go through a whole bunch of checks and balances.
I don't think we're going down a good path right now. I think.
I just wanted to update the board on the health insurance. I'll present you guys with the projected cost savings. I have negotiated and worked with them in good faith. They've voted for it, all the unions have ratified it. I thought the board would be pleased. We are saving money.
Yep.
You guys can direct me how to spend that savings. If you don't want to spend it, give it back to I take my direction from you. So we're gonna be saving the money, and depending on what we do with that savings is gonna be up to you guys in the finance committee.
I think it's not, $250 deductible per family does not sound overly onerous as far as, and I'm sure that, and does the copay count towards that deductible?
No, it does not.
Okay, so that's so,
The copay went from 15 to 22, so that's, again, not onerous.
so things like prescriptions, goes
Everything
towards
went up
the-
on the plan. Well, maybe not
Well, I mean,
prescriptions, but
everybody-
it's like pretty much,
They
there was
weren't
modest
large
increases.
everybody's plans aren't as good as they were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Even the best companies, and, I mean, it's a reality, and the pricing, if we had the same plans we had, 10 years ago, the price of that plan would be astronomical at this point. So while it seems like a savings and a reduction, I think, I think it's.
My point was, I just thought a few meetings ago, Ann, you were talking about, to Jim, about being on top of this and rewording it and getting a savings.
Yes.
And so now this meeting, I'm just hearing you say, it's not good for the employees, that we shouldn't be doing it. So that's just confusing to me.
No, and I'll tell you, you are correct in part. Again, to go back to my whole philosophy, is that every time I discussed with either Jim or the finance committee or a town meeting or this board, cost savings and operating the town at the lowest cost possible, it's with the goal of using those savings that the town, the funds that the town would not have to spend, in returning it to the taxpayer, not literally returning it to the taxpayer, but not taxing to the 2.5% maximum. Cost savings in a vacuum mean, to me, don't mean it doesn't have the same meaning if it's not being returned to the taxpayer.
Okay, I
So
guess
in-
I just look at longevity and viability of the town.
I understand.
And I'm looking at it for the next 100 years.
Yep, and
And that every dollar that we spend on this town is better for everyone in the future.
And I think, again, we all have different opinions on that, and it's astonishing to me that the town has increased its budget by 4.5% to 5% every single year for the last 20 years, and it's still, there's an astonishing amount of identified needs, and one person's needs are not another person's needs.
I would just say, I don't think the number you just quoted is accurate, but I don't think over the last 20 years, it's increased 4.5% to 5% every year. I don't think that's correct.
I think for the last, for the last 10 years, the budget has increased 50%.
Again, I don't know. Do you have any numbers that we can take a look
We don't have to
at?
go back 20 years, we can go back 10.
So, the other thing about the insurance is, what we're talking about is a 2% theoretical savings based on the current plan in this fiscal year that we're already
And they're
in.
projecting
We-
about a 6.5%
We don't
increase.
know, so it's not really saving any money next year, it's just reducing the increase that we're gonna see.
And the
So
health
it's-
insurance budget is going up right now by
Yeah.
6.2%.
So say that again, so this current plan would be 6.5% more expensive next year.
Currently. So what I'm telling the unions is, instead of it going up 6.5%, probably go up 4 or so percent instead of the 6.
To absorb it.
So it's not just it's a percentage off what we're paying now, but next year's is
The rate
going
of
to be
increase
higher
won't
either
be
way.
as
And
large.
again,
Yeah.
actually, a lot like trash, because both were gonna be higher the year later. But one was less higher than the other.
Yes.
So our last item on the agenda is vote approval of the minutes of December 18th, 2018. And I think, Ann, did you have, so we have a motion and a second. Did you have some changes?
Minor.
A word, okay, so minor
Clerical
change, you'll just,
corrections,
okay. So
scrivener's
motion and a
errors.
second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anything else before we call it a night? Motion to adjourn. Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.